I grew up in a small house on the outskirts of Columbus, Ohio. My parents, Richard and Linda, had been married for over 30 years. They always talked about family values, honesty, and standing by your own blood, no matter what. I believed them. I was their only son, and I spent my whole life trying to make them proud. I thought nothing could ever break us apart. Then one evening, a woman I barely recognized showed up at their door holding a baby. What happened next destroyed everything I thought I knew about my own family. Before I get into this story, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. If this story touches you in any way, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. What you are about to hear changed my life forever, and I think it might change the way you see family too. My name is Jeremy, and at 28 years old, I thought I had my life pretty well figured out. I worked as a software engineer at a technology company right there in Columbus. About 6 months before everything fell apart, I had received a promotion that I had been working toward for 3 years. I was saving money to buy my own house, maybe settle down someday. Life felt stable. Life felt good. Every Sunday, without fail, I would drive over to my parents' house for dinner. It was a tradition that had started when I moved out at 22, and we never broke it. My father, Richard, had spent 35 years as an electrician before retiring. He was a quiet man, the kind who showed love through actions rather than words. My mother, Linda, had worked as a nurse for most of her adult life. She was warmer, more openly affectionate, always asking about my dating life or whether I was eating enough vegetables. Those Sunday dinners meant everything to me. We would sit around the same table where I had eaten breakfast as a child, and for a few hours, nothing else in the world mattered. I felt connected to something larger than myself. I felt like I belonged. That particular Sunday started like any other. My mother had made pot roast my favorite. My father was complaining about the neighbor's dog barking too early in the morning. We were laughing about something silly when the doorbell rang. My mother wiped her hands on her apron and went to answer it. I heard voices at the door, a woman's voice I did not recognize. Then my mother called out for my father, and something in her tone made my stomach drop. I followed my parents to the front door, and that is when I saw her. A young woman, maybe 25 years old, with dark hair, pulled back in a messy ponytail. She was holding a little boy who looked about 2 years old. The child was sleeping against her shoulder. The woman looked at me, and her eyes filled with tears. Her name was Megan, and the words that came out of her mouth next would haunt me for months. She said the boy was mine. She said we had met at a party almost 3 years ago. She said she had tried to contact me but could not find me. She said she had no money left, no way to support the child on her own. She said she just needed me to take responsibility. I stood there frozen. My brain could not process what I was hearing. I looked at this woman, searched every corner of my memory, and came up empty. Yes, I remembered the party she mentioned. It was a college friend's birthday celebration. But I had no memory of spending any time alone with this woman. I certainly had no memory of anything that could have resulted in a child. I denied it immediately. I told her she had the wrong person. I asked her for proof, for anything concrete. She reached into her bag and pulled out a photograph. It was a group photo from that party. I was in it, standing in the back row. She was in the front, maybe 6 feet away from me. We were not even next to each other. That was her evidence. a group photo where we happened to be at the same party. I looked at my parents, expecting them to see how ridiculous this was. Instead, I saw something that chilled me to the bone. My mother was staring at the little boy with a strange expression. My father's face had gone hard and cold. My mother said the child looked like me. She said he had my nose, my chin. I looked at the boy, and I saw nothing. He was just a sleeping toddler. He could have looked like anyone. Megan started crying harder. She told this elaborate story about struggling alone for 2 years, about working multiple jobs, about how she had finally tracked me down through social media. She said she was not asking for money or marriage. She just wanted me to be a father to my son. My parents started asking me questions. Not questions like a supportive family would ask. Questions like prosecutors ask a defendant. Had I been drinking at that party? Did I black out? Was it possible something happened that I did not remember? I felt the ground shifting beneath my feet. In my own childhood home, surrounded by people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, I was being treated like a criminal. The evening ended with tension so thick I could barely breathe. Megan left her phone number with my mother and walked out into the night, still carrying the sleeping child. I tried to talk to my parents, tried to explain that this woman was lying or confused or both. They barely looked at me. My father told me we would discuss it later. My mother could not meet my eyes. I drove home that night, feeling like I had stepped into someone else's nightmare. Within 48 hours, my life began to unravel. I found out from a former high school classmate that Megan had been talking to people in my parents' neighborhood. She was telling everyone who would listen about the man who had abandoned her and her baby. She never used my name directly, but in a small community like that, it did not take long for people to figure out who she was talking about. Then came the social media posts. Vague, carefully worded messages about deadbeat fathers and men who refused to step up. The comments section was full of sympathetic responses, people calling the unnamed father all kinds of terrible things. Some of my old acquaintances started sending me messages, not supportive ones, curious ones, accusatory ones. At work, I noticed colleagues whispering and then going quiet when I approached. Someone had connected the dots. The rumor was spreading like a virus. I decided I had to confront my parents directly. I gathered evidence. I found old work schedules that showed I had been on a business trip just days after that party. I pulled up text messages from that time period showing I was in a completely different city. I documented everything I could think of that might prove my innocence. I drove to their house on a Wednesday evening, unannounced. I needed them to listen. I needed them to believe their own son. My father answered the door, and his expression told me everything. He was not happy to see me. We sat in the living room, and I laid out all my evidence. I showed them the schedules, the messages, the timeline that made Megan's story impossible. I explained that even if something had happened at that party, which it absolutely did not, the timing did not match up with the child's age. My father listened, with his arms crossed. When I finished, he shook his head slowly. He asked me a question I will never forget. He said, "Son, if you did not do anything wrong, why would this woman come all the way to our house? Why would she make this up?" I had no answer that would satisfy him. I did not know why Megan was doing this. I did not understand her motivation. All I knew was that I was telling the truth. My mother had been crying quietly the whole time. She finally spoke up. She told me she had met with Megan privately. She said she could sense that Megan was genuine. She said a mother knows when another woman is telling the truth about her child. I felt like I was losing my mind. My own mother trusted a complete stranger over her own son. I went home that night and started doing research. If my parents would not believe me, I needed to find out who Megan really was and what she actually wanted. It took me 3 days of digging through social media public records and mutual connections. What I found made my blood run cold. Megan had a history. She had been sued twice for fraud, small amounts that were settled out of court. She had been evicted from 2 apartments for non-payment of rent. She had a pattern of entering relationships with men and then claiming various emergencies that required financial assistance. But the most important thing I discovered was this Megan had dated a guy named Derek. Derek was someone I knew from college. We were not close friends, but we ran in the same circles. Derek had been at that same party 3 years ago. Derek had actually spent time with Megan that night. I remembered seeing them together laughing in a corner, leaving together at some point in the evening. I reached out to Derek through a mutual friend. When I explained the situation, Derek went quiet for a long time. Then he admitted that yes, he and Megan had dated briefly. They had been together for maybe 2 months before he ended things. He said she had become increasingly demanding, asking for money, making accusations when he refused. Derek said he had no idea about any baby. I had my answer. I knew who the real father likely was. I took this information straight to my parents. I arrived at their house feeling almost hopeful. Surely now they would see the truth. Surely now they would understand that Megan had chosen me as a target because I was more successful than Derek, because my family had more resources. But when I walked in, Megan was already there. She was sitting on my mother's couch crying into a tissue. My mother had her arm around her. My father stood by the window, his face like stone. Megan looked up at me with terror in her eyes. She told my parents that I had been threatening her. She said I had sent her messages warning her to drop her claims or face consequences. She said she was afraid of me. I had never sent any such messages. I had not communicated with her at all since that first night. But my parents believed her. Of course they did. They had already decided I was the villain in this story. My father stepped toward me. His voice was low and dangerous. He called me a coward. He said a real man would take responsibility for his actions instead of trying to intimidate a helpless young mother. I tried to explain about Derek. I tried to show them what I had discovered. My father did not want to hear it. He said I was making up stories to avoid my obligations. Then came the ultimatum. My father told me I had 2 choices. I could admit that the child was mine and start providing financial support immediately. Or I could walk out that door and never come back. He said if I chose the second option, I would no longer be his son. I looked at my mother, hoping for some sign of support. She looked away. I told them the truth one more time. I told them I did not father that child. I told them Megan was lying. I told them I would not confess to something I did not do just to keep the peace. My father pointed at the door. And just like that, I lost my family. The first few weeks after being disowned were the darkest of my life. I threw myself into work, but I could barely concentrate. I stopped eating regular meals. I lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, wondering if there was something I could have said differently that would have made them believe me. Most of my friends had heard the rumors by now. Some of them distanced themselves, not wanting to be associated with the drama. Others called to ask questions in voices that made it clear they had already decided I was guilty. But there was one person who never wavered. His name was Marcus, and he had been my best friend since freshman year of college. Marcus had known me through every phase of my adult life. He knew my character. He knew I was not capable of what Megan was accusing me of. Marcus was the one who finally talked some sense into me. He came over to my apartment one evening with a pizza and a blunt message. He told me I needed to stop feeling sorry for myself and start fighting back. He reminded me that in this country, we have a legal system specifically designed to determine the truth in situations like this. He told me to get a DNA test. He said once I had scientific proof that the child was not mine, no one could deny my innocence. It seemed so obvious when he said it. Why had I not thought of this before I had been so caught up in the emotional trauma that I had forgotten about the one thing that could definitively prove the truth? The next morning, I called a family law attorney named Mr. Patterson. I explained my situation, and he was immediately sympathetic. He told me that requesting a court-ordered DNA test was straightforward, especially when paternity was being disputed. We filed the paperwork that same week. The legal process required Megan to submit to the testing. She could not refuse without looking guilty. When Megan received the court order, she tried to fight it. She claimed it was unnecessary that a mother knows who fathered her child. She said the legal process was traumatizing her and her son. She asked for delays, extensions, more time. But I had made my decision. I was not going to stop until I had the truth documented in black and white. The judge denied all of Megan's delay requests. A date was set for the DNA collection. I went to the testing facility on a cold Tuesday morning. Megan was there with the child refusing to look at me. The process took less than 15 minutes. A simple cheek swab that would determine the course of multiple lives. Then came the waiting. The lab said results would take approximately 2 weeks. Those 14 days felt like 14 years. I tried to keep busy. I went to the gym. I put in extra hours at work. I had dinner with Marcus twice a week, just to maintain some sense of normalcy. But every morning, when I woke up, my first thought was about those test results. Finally, the call came. I was at my desk at work when my phone rang. It was Mr. Patterson. His voice was calm, professional. The results were in. I was not the father. The test showed 0% probability of biological relation. I sat at my desk for a long time after that call. I did not cry. I did not celebrate. I just sat there feeling the weight of months of pain slowly lifting from my shoulders. Mr. Patterson recommended we pursue legal action against Megan for defamation and emotional distress. I agreed without hesitation. This woman had nearly destroyed my life. She needed to face consequences. The attorney also did something I had not requested but was grateful for. He sent a copy of the DNA results to my parents' address via certified mail. They would receive official documentation that their son had been telling the truth all along. With my name cleared, I started investigating further. Through legal channels, we were able to establish that Derek was indeed the biological father of Megan's child. When confronted with this information, Derek initially denied everything. But DNA does not lie, and eventually he was forced to acknowledge paternity. The picture became clear. Megan had known all along that Derek was the father. But Derek had cut off contact with her when she started demanding money. He was not wealthy. His family had no resources. So Megan had chosen a new target. She had researched the people at that party, found out that I was successful, that my parents were established homeowners in a good neighborhood. She had crafted a plan to extract money and support from my family by playing on their emotions. It had almost worked. When the truth came out, Megan disappeared. She moved out of her apartment, deactivated her social media accounts, and left Columbus entirely. I never saw her again. Derek was left to deal with his actual responsibilities as a father, though I heard he fought it every step of the way. 1 week after my parents received the DNA results, my phone rang. It was my father. His voice sounded different than I had ever heard it. Smaller, older, broken. He asked if we could meet. He said he and my mother had something they needed to say to me. My mother cried before I even sat down. She reached for my hand across the table, apologizing over and over. She said she had made the worst mistake of her life. She said she would never forgive herself for choosing a stranger's tears over her own son's word. My father sat rigid in his chair, clearly uncomfortable with the public display of emotion. But when he spoke, his words carried more weight than my mother's tears. He told me he was wrong. He admitted that his pride and his fear had clouded his judgment. He explained that when Megan showed up, something deep in his psyche had panicked. He had always worried about me, about the pressures young men face, about the mistakes that can derail a life. When Megan presented her accusation, he had jumped to the worst conclusion because he was terrified it might be true. It was not an excuse, he said. It was just the truth about his own failure as a father. They asked me to come home. They said they wanted to rebuild what had been broken. They promised things would be different. I listened to everything they said. Then I told them something they were not expecting. I told them I needed time. The wound was too fresh. The betrayal ran too deep. For months I had endured public humiliation, lost friendships, questioned my own sanity, all because the two people who should have defended me chose to believe a manipulative stranger instead. I was not going to pretend that a single conversation could erase all of that. But I also told them I was willing to try. I was not ready to give up on our family completely. I just could not rush the healing process. We parted that day with an agreement. We would rebuild slowly, phone calls first, maybe lunch once in a while. Eventually, if trust could be reestablished, perhaps Sunday dinners again. In the months that followed, I did something I should have done much earlier. I started seeing a therapist. I needed help processing everything that had happened, not just the accusation itself, but the deeper pain of being abandoned by the people who raised me. Therapy taught me important lessons. I learned that my worth was not determined by whether my parents believed in me. I learned that forgiveness is not about forgetting, but about choosing not to let the past control your future. I learned that boundaries are necessary, even with family. 6 months after our coffee shop meeting, I finally accepted an invitation to Sunday dinner. Walking into that house felt surreal. Everything looked the same, yet everything had changed. My mother had made pot roast again. My father still complained about the neighbor's dog. But there was a new dynamic between us. They listened more. They apologized often sometimes for small things that did not require apologies. They were trying genuinely, trying to earn back what they had thrown away. I appreciated their efforts, but I also accepted that some damage cannot be fully repaired. The memory of standing in that doorway, being told I was no longer a son, would never completely disappear. What I gained from this experience was unexpected. I gained clarity about what family really means. It is not just about blood. It is about trust, about showing up for each other, about giving people the benefit of the doubt, even when the evidence seems damning. My parents failed that test. They know it. I know it. But I also believe that people can change if they want to badly enough. And I believe in second chances, even if they come with conditions. The deepest lesson I carry from this experience is simple stand up for yourself, even when no one else will. I could have given in. I could have accepted the false accusation just to avoid conflict and preserve family harmony. Instead, I fought for the truth, and the truth set me free. I do not hold anger in my heart anymore. Anger would only hurt me, not Megan, not my parents, not anyone who doubted me. Letting go of that anger was the hardest part of my healing journey, but also the most liberating. Today, my relationship with my parents is different than it was before all this happened. It is more honest in a way. We have seen each other at our worst. There are no more illusions about unconditional love. We know now that love requires work communication and the willingness to admit when you are wrong. If you are watching this and you have ever been falsely accused of something, I want you to know that the truth has a way of revealing itself. Do not give up. Do not accept blame for things you did not do. Fight for yourself, even if you have to fight alone. And if you are someone who has wrongly accused another person or believed a lie about someone without questioning it, I hope you will reflect on the damage that causes. Words and assumptions can destroy lives. They nearly destroyed mine. So let me ask you something. If you were in my position, if your own parents chose to believe a stranger over you, and then came back asking for forgiveness after being proven wrong, what would you do? Would you forgive completely and welcome them back with open arms? Or would you, like me, choose to rebuild slowly with boundaries in place? I really want to know your thoughts, so please share them in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, I would be grateful if you hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories. And if you have not already, please subscribe to this channel so you do not miss future stories like this one. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it, someone who might be going through something similar. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my story. I appreciate every single one of you who stayed until the end. I wish you strength in your own battles, whatever they may be. And I hope you always have people in your life who believe in you when it matters most.